Good early morning here on Wednesday. We are on chapter 35 inside of Zero Day. We did 2 chapters yesterday. We learned a little bit about Michael and his father. They were flying, and he said at the end, like, "Can you fix this?" And I'm assuming it has something to do with Addie. Or that he had figured out that McQueen maybe was tracking him. Chapter 35. Let's see what happens as we continue on. Darryl was stuffing books into his backpack, getting ready for another day of school, when his phone buzzed. He glanced down, an email alert from his White House account. He tapped the screen and he cringed. McQueen. Situation has changed. Meet me in my office, 8:15 a.m. Urgent. Oh. Darryl's eyebrows bunched together. Right, darn, the right situation has changed. Darryl had his recording, and he didn't have to take being blackmailed. Juvenile record or no juvenile record. Darryl checked the time. It was 7. School started at 8, but the first period today was morning meeting, the traditional Quaker meditation, and he didn't really need to be there for class until 9:30. He grabbed his things and he went downstairs for breakfast. His mother was in the kitchen eating a bowl of quinoa and reading the Washington Post. She folded the paper and she set it on the table. "Morning, hon," she said. "Join me." "Sure," he said, and he grabbed a bagel, cream cheese, and a gallon of orange juice, and he sat down. He poured himself a glass of juice, drank it all in one large gulp, and poured himself another. Cheryl watched him, eyebrows arched. "I was wondering where the last gallon went," she then said. Darryl smirked as he filled the third glass. He spread some cream cheese on his bagel and he took a bite, staring absent-mindedly out the window. The bird fluttered from branch to branch on their big tree in the backyard, landing briefly on one, only to move to the next. There was something off about McQueen's email. If he just wanted to prove that he hadn't lost Darrow's file, why make such a big production out of it? Why tell him it was that the situation had changed? "Hey," Darrow's mother then interrupted his thoughts. "What's got you all distracted this morning, huh?" "What?" Darrow said, and he shook off the question. "Nothing." "Nothing, of course," Darryl said, glancing at the newspaper. The front page headlines was about the arrest of a man implicated in the Cerberus attack, and hinted more arrests would soon be made. Darrow saw no mention of the fact that an unmanned drone had breached the White House perimeter. He wasn't surprised, though. His mother had told him they'd managed to downplay the story. For some reason, Cerberus hadn't come forward to take credit for this at this time, and the administration was just playing it off as an accident. No one beyond a small circle of White House insiders even knew the drone had been detonated, or the fact that Addie had been just a few feet away when it did. Darrow shuddered. Had that drone been armed, she might be dead. "She's okay, hon," Cheryl then said, reading his mind. "Addie, I know you're worried about her, but she's fine, all right?" "Sure," he said. Cheryl got up and she rinsed her bowl into the sink, and then she slipped on her suit jacket and headed to the door. "I've got to run, but I'll see you tonight," and she blew him a kiss. "Have a nice day, Mom," Darrow then said. He sat there a little while longer before leaving. When he reached the EEOB, it was 5 minutes past 8. He didn't know what McQueen wanted now, but he was certain it wasn't to meet him for coffee and donuts. At least this time, Darrow thought, as he tapped the phone in his pocket, he'd be ready. When Darrow entered McQueen's office, his assistant waved him through. "Go on in, he's expecting you," she said. "Been working here most of the night." Darrow walked around her desk and down the hallway to the door of McQueen's office. It was partially closed. He could smell coffee brewing on the other side. Darrow rapped on the door with his knuckles, and he waited for the gruff response. It didn't come. Darrow knocked again, and the impact pushed the door open slightly. McQueen's chair was turned away, but Darrow could see the outline of the general's broad shoulders. He walked inside. "General? Sir?" "It's Darrow Ferguson. You wanted to see me?" The man in the chair didn't answer. With growing trepidation, Darrow took measured steps towards McQueen's high-back leather chair. Maybe he'd fallen asleep. His assistant had said that he was working late, but something about the angle of McQueen's head didn't look right. Darrow's heart then pounded. Darrow rounded the desk. An empty bottle of medication sat on top, capped next to it. Darrow called out McQueen's name again, and he touched the chair. It spun towards him. The general wasn't wearing his usual suit, but a gray army t-shirt and athletic pants. His head lolled unnaturally to the left. Darrow grasped. Frantic, he put 2 fingers on McQueen's neck. There was a pulse, but it was very faint. "Help!" Darrow then yelled. "Somebody help!" As Darrow moved the general to the floor, McQueen's assistant rushed into the room and screamed. "I think he's had a heart attack," Darrow said, and he shoved his palm into the general's chest and began counting out compressions. The secretary pulled the phone off the desk and dialed 911. Come on, Darrow said, pushing against McQueen's ribs. He wasn't the general's biggest fan, but he sure as heck didn't want him to die. Out of nowhere, a hand reached up and gripped Darrow's shirt with such force he almost screamed. McQueen's eyes flew open and he stared at Darrow. Ed, cough, sir, cough, choke. What? Darrow said. A strange wheeze came out of McQueen's throat. Darrow shook his head. Stop! Don't try to talk. McQueen's assistant began shouting into the phone. I'm in the office of General James McQueen, 4th floor on the Eisenhower Executive Office Building. He's had a heart attack, maybe it appears, she said. McQueen heaved another breath. Sir! He sputtered again. And then the hand gripped Darrow's shirt, released, and it fell to the ground. Darrow watched in horror as General McQueen's eyes stopped looking at him and rolled into the back of his head. He pushed a few more compressions, but it was pointless. All the breath left Darrow's chest. McQueen was dead. The operator's voice drifted from the phone in the secretary's head. Please remain where you are, ma'am. Help is on its way. A tall, slim figure leaned against the cool granite of the EEOB's exterior wall, just out of sight of the main entrance, hunched beneath a black trench coat. From behind a pair of sunglasses, he watched the stretcher carry away the corpse. He knew it was a corpse and not a patient because the sheet had been pulled over the large man's face. A crowd had gathered, including several others who were covering their faces and sobbing, along with the typical curious onlookers who were snapping photos with their phones and whispering among themselves, hoping they'd witness the demise of someone important. The legs of the stretcher screeched as the EMT lifted it into the back of the ambulance. He watched as the rescue vehicle drove away. No lights flashing, no siren for the dead. It was done. He turned and disappeared into the crowd of tourists and made his way down Pennsylvania Avenue. As he walked, he looked down at the phone in his hand, slick from his sweaty palms. He was still in shock. He had been worried the plan might not work. He almost wished it hadn't. He never had helped kill someone before, and it left him with a strange feeling in his gut, hollow, like a different person. A strange, weird shell of himself. Sometimes he hated this world, a world where it was possible to kill so easily without looking someone in their eye. Today, an EEOB janitors had made sure of that. A slick swipe of McQueen's natural daily heart medication for a lethal dosage while the general was away from his desk exercising, and a half hour later the general was unwittingly offed himself. Michael's body suddenly felt inexplicably light, as though he could no longer feel his arms or his legs. What had he just done? And what made him do this? Was he a terrorist? Was he no different than one? He couldn't think about it anymore. He tapped the phone screen and he typed a message. The answer came back almost immediately. Good work, son. I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you? It was all that he'd ever wanted. He smiled and he put the phone back into his jacket, trying to forget about the man under the sheet. He wasn't a man, just a threat. That was all. A threat that had to be neutralized. Michael now is adding to some of the problems, huh? Ooh. I thought maybe McQueen would come back, but I'm thinking now if he switched out the medicine, he's definitely probably not going to come back. Oof. Till next time.